AITA for refusing to invite my sister to my wedding after she spread a humiliating rumor about me. This is a long one, so bear with me. I, 28F, am getting married in about 6 months. My fiancé, 30M, and I have been together for 4 years, and we've been planning this wedding for over a year now. We're both pretty close with our families, except for one major issue. My older sister, 32F, who I have a complicated relationship with. For some background, my sister and I were never super close growing up. She was the golden child, always the favorite for my parents, popular in school, athletic, and generally successful. I was more quiet and awkward and spent a lot of time trying to live up to her achievements. There was some sibling rivalry, but I chalked most of it up to typical sister stuff. The real problems started about 3 years ago. I was dating my fiancé for about a year, and we were pretty serious by then. My sister met him at a family dinner and was instantly cold toward him. She never said why, just made passive-aggressive remarks about him being boring or not good enough when I wasn't around. I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe she just didn't like the idea of me being with someone long-term. Then, a few months later, something happened that changed everything. At a work event, someone I knew told me that a friend of theirs had overheard my sister telling a group of people a humiliating story about me. According to the story, I had supposedly cheated on my fiancé early in our relationship with some random guy at a party. The story claimed I was lying about being faithful and that my fiancé was clueless. This was 100% false. I've never cheated, and I would never do that. I confronted my sister about it, and she denied everything, but I knew she had said something because multiple people in our family and friend circles started acting weird around me. My fiancé was hurt and angry, but he trusted me, so we kept it quiet between us. I tried to talk to my parents about it, but they shrugged it off, saying, maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Things got worse over the next year. The rumor spread enough that people started asking my fiancé if it was true or hinting at it in subtle ways. At one point, a close mutual friend told me she wasn't sure if she wanted to invite my sister to the wedding because she had heard some ugly things and didn't want drama. When I brought this up with my sister again, she got defensive and claimed I was paranoid and overreacting. She said she never said those things about me and that I was trying to ruin her reputation by accusing her. Fast forward to 6 months ago when we officially started sending out wedding invites. I talked to my fiancé about whether or not we should invite my sister. He said he didn't want to cause any family drama, but that he'd support whatever I decided. We agreed that we couldn't risk the wedding being overshadowed by her presence. So, we decided not to invite her. We told our parents we were doing this to keep things peaceful, and while they weren't thrilled, they accepted it. That's when the fallout happened. My sister found out she wasn't invited, and she lost it. She called me repeatedly, sent me angry texts, and posted vague, hurtful messages on social media about how she was being ostracized and betrayed by her own family. She started telling other family members and friends that I was controlling and vindictive for excluding her. Some relatives have taken her side, saying I should have been more forgiving and that family should always come first. Others have told me they understand my decision given the circumstances. Now I'm stuck in the middle. My fiancé and I want to focus on our day and our future, but I'm dealing with the emotional fallout from cutting my sister out of the wedding. I don't want to have her there because I'm afraid she'll cause more problems or embarrass me with more rumors or passive-aggressive behavior. I know I'm not obligated to invite someone who has hurt me like this, but my parents keep pressuring me to reconcile and do the right thing by including her. My sister also refuses to communicate except to accuse me of ruining the family. So, AITA for refusing to invite my sister to my wedding after she spread a humiliating and false rumor about me. Should I just bite the bullet and invite her for the sake of family peace? Or am I right to protect myself and my fiancé from what's likely to be more drama? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding because of how she treated me during a family crisis? This has been eating at me for months now, and I'm still torn about whether I'm in the wrong or if I'm justified. I'll try to give you the full context because the situation is pretty complicated and involves family dynamics that have been building up for years. So, I'm 29F, and my sister, let's call her Emma, is 31F. We were always close growing up, but as we got older, things got tense between us. Emma has always been the type to expect things to go her way and to make big demands, especially around family events. I'm more easygoing, but I'm also very private and tend to keep my own issues to myself. About 6 months ago, my dad was diagnosed with a serious illness. It was sudden, and it hit our family hard. Our parents have always been kind of traditional and old-fashioned, so when this happened, my sister basically took over the situation. She called all the shots on treatment plans, doctor visits, family schedules, you name it. That was fine, except she expected everyone to drop everything and revolve around her decisions. I was working full-time and also dealing with my own mental health struggles, which I didn't really want to get into with everyone else, but Emma made it her mission to help me by constantly checking in and pushing me to do what she thought was best. Here's where it starts to get complicated. I have social anxiety and depression, and during the whole dad's illness phase, I was trying to cope in my own way. Emma, instead of being supportive, kept criticizing me for not being more involved or helpful. She accused me of being selfish for not spending more time with Dad or for not helping with the house chores during his hospital stays. I tried to explain that my way of coping was different and that I was still supporting in my own way, but she wouldn't hear it. She was very vocal about how disappointed she was in me, and even our mom got involved, siding with Emma for the most part. At one point, I got overwhelmed and told Emma that her attitude was making things worse for me. That's when she accused me of being dramatic and told me that family comes first, and if I wasn't willing to step up, I was basically abandoning them. That hurt a lot because I had been doing my best under the circumstances. Fast forward a few months, and Emma gets engaged. She's planning a big wedding, and since she's the oldest sibling, she expected me to help organize everything. Invitations, seating charts, vendor research, you name it. She started sending me lists and deadlines without even asking if I had the time or capacity to help. I told her up front that I didn't think I could commit to being as involved as she wanted, but I'd help where I could. She wasn't happy with that answer and kept pressuring me. Then, she did something that really pushed me over the edge. She started publicly sharing posts on social media about how stressful wedding planning was and dropped hints about family members not pulling their weight. I recognized this as a clear jab at me, especially since she tagged other family members as "thank you for the support," but left me out. It felt humiliating and like she was trying to shame me into doing more. After weeks of back and forth, I finally told her that I wouldn't be helping with the wedding at all because of how she treated me during Dad's illness. I explained that I felt hurt and unsupported, and I didn't want to put myself through more emotional strain. She blew up at me, calling me selfish, immature, and said I was choosing to be the villain in the family drama. She also accused me of ruining her special moment and said I was being spiteful. Our parents got involved again, and they told me I was being unreasonable and that family should stick together. My mom said that weddings are stressful for everyone and that I should just get over it. And hell, my sister. My dad, who has been in and out of the hospital, seemed disappointed when I told him I wouldn't be involved, though he hasn't said much directly. Since then, Emma has basically cut contact with me. She's going ahead with the wedding without me, and I'm not invited to help in any way. I feel hurt because I wanted to support her in some capacity, but I also feel like my boundaries and feelings have been completely disregarded. On the other hand, I keep wondering if I'm being selfish by not helping my sister during a once-in-a-lifetime event, especially since she's also dealing with stress and pressure. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding because of how she treated me during our dad's illness? Or should I just put aside my feelings and try to support her anyway? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my house and said I should get a real home for such an important event? So, this all started about a year ago when my sister, Emma, got engaged to her fiancé, Mark. Emma and I have always had a somewhat tense relationship, mostly due to our completely different personalities and lifestyles, but we've never been outright hostile to each other. I live in a modest, older house in a quiet suburb, which I love. It's not flashy or new, but it's home, full of memories and personal touches. Emma, on the other hand, has always preferred things to be more upscale and modern, and she has never been shy about expressing her opinions on my choices. When she announced her engagement, she immediately started talking about the wedding. I was excited for her, even though I knew things might get tricky. Emma suggested hosting the wedding at my house because, according to her, it's central for most family members and would save a lot of money. I was a bit surprised, but willing to help if I could, so I agreed to let her consider the option. From the start, Emma was very critical about my house. She said things like, "It's really cute for everyday living, but not a proper venue, and you should think about upgrading or at least cleaning up if you want this to work." I try to brush it off, knowing how particular she can be. I didn't want to host a big event, but I was happy to support her if it meant helping make her day special. Things escalated when Emma brought her wedding planner and Mark over for a site visit. The moment they walked in, Emma loudly complained about the uneven floorboards, the old paint, the furniture that didn't fit the theme, and even the backyard fence. She said it looked like it belonged in a dump, and that no one is going to want to take pictures there. I felt really hurt, but stayed quiet, hoping they'd see past the superficial stuff. Later that evening, Emma pulled me aside and said, "Look, if we're doing this here, you have to seriously fix the place or it's not happening. Honestly, I think you should just get a real home. This is a big day, and your house isn't wedding material." She went on about how the ambience matters, how she wanted it to look like a fairy tale and not some grandma's cluttered living room. She said this in the most condescending tone, as if I was some amateur who didn't know what they were doing. I told her I wasn't going to change my house just for one day, especially not at her demands, and that if she wanted the wedding to be perfect, maybe it was better to look at a professional venue. She accused me of being stubborn and selfish, saying I was ruining her dream, wedding over pride. Mark stayed quiet the whole time, but I could see he was uncomfortable with how Emma was treating me. A few weeks later, Emma sent me a formal message through our mom, saying she was canceling plans to host the wedding at my house. She said, "If you're going to be like this, then I'll just find somewhere else." I was relieved, but also sad because I genuinely wanted to support her, just not at the cost of feeling disrespected. Emma's wedding is now scheduled at a country club about an hour away. The invitations went out last week, and my name wasn't mentioned in the list of people helping or involved. When I asked Mom about it, she said Emma was upset and didn't want me involved at all. I'm feeling really conflicted. On one hand, I understand that weddings are important and people want everything perfect. But on the other hand, Emma's attitude towards my home and me was humiliating and disrespectful. I wasn't trying to ruin her day. I was just standing up for myself and my home. I've been avoiding family gatherings because I feel awkward, and I'm worried this has caused a permanent rift. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to put my sister's wedding in my home after she insulted my house and told me to get a real home for her wedding? Or is Emma being unreasonable for expecting me to change everything about my life and my home to fit her idea of a perfect wedding? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she excluded my husband from the ceremony? This all started about 6 months ago when my sister, Emma, got engaged. She and her fiancé, Mark, have been dating for 3 years, and we were all excited for the wedding. Emma and I have always been close, and my husband, Jake, and I have spent a lot of time with her and Mark over the years. We were genuinely happy for them. A little background on Jake and me. We've been married for 8 years and have a pretty solid relationship. We live about an hour away from Emma, so we see her fairly often. Jake is generally pretty easygoing, but has a strong sense of fairness and loyalty, especially when it comes to family. When Emma announced the wedding date, she also shared that it would be a relatively small ceremony with only close family and a few friends. We understood and respected that. However, things started getting weird shortly after the initial excitement died down. Emma's fiancé, Mark, has a bit of a complicated history. He was married before and has 2 kids from that marriage. The divorce was messy, and Mark's ex-wife, is known to be very controlling and vindictive. Emma told me that because of this, they wanted to keep the wedding very private to avoid any drama. Fair enough. A few weeks ago, Emma invited me over to discuss the wedding details. She said she wanted to talk about seating arrangements and asked me to bring Jake along. I agreed, and when Jake and I arrived, Emma was strangely hesitant to talk about the wedding plans. Eventually, she said something that shocked me. "Jake, I'm sorry, but Mark and I have decided that you won't be part of the ceremony. We want you to attend the reception, but not the actual wedding." I was taken aback. Emma didn't give a clear reason at first, just saying it was a complicated situation, and Mark's ex is very sensitive. I pressed for more details and eventually found out that Mark's ex had made it clear she would cause problems if Jake was present at the ceremony. She apparently views Jake as a threat or something, even though Jake has never met her or had any interaction with her. Emma said she didn't want to risk any confrontation or drama at the wedding, so the solution was to keep Jake out of the ceremony itself. The reception, which would be a separate event in the evening, was fine with him being there. I was hurt and confused. Jake is my husband, and the idea of excluding him from one of the most important moments in my life felt wrong. I asked Emma why she didn't just talk to Mark's ex and try to set boundaries, or why they couldn't invite Jake and handle any issues calmly. Emma said that she had tried, but Mark's ex was unreasonable and threatening legal action if Jake showed up. I told Emma that excluding Jake felt like a betrayal and that I wouldn't go through with it. I said if Jake can't be at the wedding, neither would I. Emma got upset and accused me of making the situation about myself and being difficult. She said this was about protecting the wedding from unnecessary drama and that I was being selfish by refusing to compromise. We argued for a while, but I stood firm. Jake supported me fully and said he wouldn't attend either if he wasn't invited to the ceremony. Emma stopped responding to our calls and texts for a few days. Eventually, she sent a message saying she was disappointed and that maybe we should skip the wedding altogether if we couldn't respect their wishes. The rest of the family is divided. My parents think Emma is overreacting, but also understand she wants a drama-free wedding. Some of my cousins think I'm being unreasonable for making a big deal about Jake not attending the ceremony. Others side with me, saying a wedding should include your spouse. The wedding is next month. Emma said she still hopes Jake and I will come to the reception, but I told her if Jake isn't welcome at the ceremony, we're not going at all. I feel like my loyalty is to my husband, not to someone else's unreasonable demands, no matter how much I love my sister. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she excluded my husband from the ceremony. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the bridal party and then demanded I pay for part of it. This has been building for a while, and I honestly can't decide if I'm in the wrong or if my sister is just being unreasonable. I'm 28F and my sister is 32F. We were pretty close growing up, but things have gotten complicated over the last couple of years. About 6 months ago, my sister got engaged to her boyfriend of 3 years. When she announced the engagement, she said she wanted a small wedding with close friends and family, which seemed fine. But then she started planning, and things began to feel off. She told me she had already picked her bridal party, and, to my surprise, I wasn't included. Now, I'm not the type to expect to be a bridesmaid, just because I'm family, but I did expect to be asked or at least included in some way. She told me it was just a small group of her closest friends, and that it wasn't personal. I tried to brush it off, but I felt hurt. What made it worse was that my other sister, who is married and has a toddler, was included even though they've never been close. So I asked her if we could talk about it, because I felt left out and confused. She basically told me that she didn't want me in the bridal party because I'm too opinionated and too dramatic, which really stung because I've never acted that way around her. I tried to explain that I wouldn't cause any problems, but she shut me down. Then the real kicker came a few weeks later when she sent a group message to the bridal party and family outlining the wedding costs. The venue, decorations, and even the dresses were to be paid by the bridal party members. That wasn't exactly shocking, but then she asked me to pay for some of the shared expenses even though I wasn't in the bridal party. I asked for clarification, and she said since I'm family and invited to the wedding, I'm expected to contribute to the overall cost, including a portion of the rehearsal dinner, the dress she wanted me to wear, not part of the bridal party, just a family dress, and the gift bags. The amount was about $700 in total. I told her I wasn't comfortable paying that much for a wedding I wasn't even a major part of, especially since I wasn't in the bridal party. I offered to give a gift and pay for my own dress and rehearsal dinner ticket, but she said that wasn't enough and made it clear that if I didn't pay, I wasn't welcome to the rehearsal dinner or the wedding itself. I was shocked. I tried to reason with her, explaining that family usually supports each other and that asking me to pay for something I wasn't involved in was unfair. She accused me of being selfish and trying to make everything about me, which honestly hurt because I was just trying to set boundaries. The tension escalated, and I eventually told her I wasn't going to pay and that I might not attend the wedding if that was how she wanted to handle things. She said that was her choice and that maybe I wasn't as important to her as I thought. Our parents are caught in the middle. They've tried to mediate, but seem to side with her because it's her big day. My other sister and I aren't talking much now because she's supporting the bride. I feel like I'm being punished for not playing along with her demands. On the other hand, I do understand that weddings can be expensive and people want everyone involved to help, but it feels like she's weaponizing the event against me. So, AITA for refusing to pay for parts of a wedding I'm not actively involved in and for threatening to skip it if that doesn't change? Or is she being unreasonable for excluding me and then trying to force me to pay? AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she asked for my help and then insulted me? I, 29F, have a sister, Emily, 26F, who recently got engaged to her boyfriend, Mark, 28M. From the beginning, the wedding planning has been a huge source of stress and drama, and now I'm caught in the middle, wondering if I'm the asshole for standing my ground. Emily and I have always been close, but we've never been super financially close. We live in different cities, and I'm pretty independent with my own career and financial responsibilities. Emily, on the other hand, has had a string of dead-end jobs and has leaned on our parents and occasionally me for money in the past. Not a huge amount, but enough to make me cautious. When Emily got engaged, she was ecstatic and immediately started talking about this huge wedding she wanted. She wants a big, traditional ceremony in her hometown with over 200 guests, a fancy venue, a full band, and a designer dress. Mark is supportive, but he's told me privately that he's not really into the whole wedding hoopla and that Emily is the one pushing for all the extravagance. At first, I thought I'd help where I could, but I never intended to pay for anything. I have my own bills, student loans, and savings goals. When Emily asked me to help with some costs, like contributing to the venue or the catering, I told her that I could maybe help with a small part, but couldn't afford to cover large expenses. That's when things started to go downhill. Emily took my refusal to pay for a chunk of the wedding as a personal insult. She told me I was being cheap and not family-oriented. She said, "If you can't support me on my big day, what kind of sister are you?" I tried to explain that it's not about not supporting her emotionally or being there for her, but about financial realities. Our parents got involved at this point. They have always helped Emily with money and are offering to cover most of the wedding costs, but Emily keeps saying she wants everyone to pitch in, including me. One night, after a family dinner where the wedding was the main topic, Emily cornered me in front of our parents and Mark and said, "I can't believe you won't pay for my wedding. You always say you love me, but when it comes down to it, you're just selfish." It was humiliating and really hurtful. I told her that my love isn't measured in dollars, and I'll be there to celebrate her day, but I won't put myself in financial trouble for it. Things got worse when Emily started posting subtle, passive-aggressive things on social media about family who only care about money, and how support is more than just words. Some mutual friends reached out to ask what was going on, and I told them my side. I never asked for sympathy. I just wanted to explain why I wasn't handing over thousands of dollars. The final straw was when Emily's wedding planner called me to ask if I had sent a deposit for the venue, because apparently Emily had told the planner I was going to cover it. I was shocked and told the planner that was not true. I confronted Emily, and she accused me of not stepping up and called me a liar. I ended up blocking her on social media because I couldn't deal with the constant drama. Our parents are upset with me too, saying I should make sacrifices for family, but I feel like I'm being unfairly targeted. Now, Emily's wedding is just a week away, and I'm debating whether to go at all. I want to support her, but I don't feel welcome or respected. So, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she asked for my help and then insulted me. AITA for refusing to give my sister's boyfriend a place to stay even though he's in a tough spot, and now my family hates me. So, this whole situation started about 2 months ago, and it's been a huge mess ever since. I, 27F, have always been pretty close with my sister, Emma, 29F. We're about 2 years apart, but we grew up super tight. Our parents live out of state, so it's mostly been us and our little group of friends for support over the years. Emma started dating this guy, Mike, 30M, about 6 months ago. I'll admit, I wasn't super thrilled when she first told me about him. Something just fell off, but I kept it to myself because I wanted her to be happy. Fast forward to 2 months ago, Mike lost his job. Apparently, he'd been working some contract gigs that dried up, and then he got laid off from his main job because of company downsizing. Emma said he was really stressed, and they were scrambling to figure things out. They've been living together in a small apartment nearby, and I didn't hear too many details beyond that. Then, a couple of weeks ago, Emma calls me out of the blue, looking kind of frantic. Mike apparently got kicked out of the apartment. She said it was because Mike hadn't been paying rent for the last 2 months, which she didn't realize until the landlord finally gave them an eviction notice. I was pretty shocked because I knew Emma was working full-time, and I assumed they'd split the rent somehow. She said Mike had been dealing with stuff and not communicating much. She begged me to help them out by letting Mike crash at my place temporarily while they figured things out. Now, my apartment is small, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and I live alone. I'm not exactly rolling in extra space. Plus, I work from home and have a very strict routine. I'm also a very private person and not great at handling overnight guests, especially someone I barely know. I told Emma that I wasn't comfortable having Mike stay with me long-term, but that I could help for a couple of nights if it was absolutely necessary. She insisted it was urgent and that Mike really had nowhere else to go. I reluctantly agreed to let him stay for 2 nights, but I set clear boundaries. No overnight guests beyond that, no parties, and he needed to respect my space and schedule. Mike arrived late that night, and honestly, it was awkward but manageable. I didn't engage much. I was just trying to be polite and give him space. Things went downhill fast after that. The very next day, Mike acted like he owned the place. He started leaving his stuff all over the living room, making a huge mess in the kitchen and not doing any cleaning. I asked him politely to clean up and respect the space. He got defensive, saying he was stressed and had bigger problems. I told Emma about this, and she said I was being too harsh and that Mike was just going through a hard time. Then, on the second night, Mike brought a friend over without asking me. The friend stayed for several hours, drinking and making noise. I work early in the morning, so I was frustrated and told Mike firmly that this was not okay. He got confrontational, saying I wasn't being a good host and that I should be more understanding. I told Emma about the friend situation and my frustration, and instead of backing me up, Emma accused me of turning against Mike and not being family. She said that if I really cared about her, I helped Mike get back on his feet instead of kicking him out after 2 days. I tried explaining that my place isn't a shelter and that I have my own life and boundaries, but she wasn't having it. A few days later, Emma's entire side of the family, including our parents, got involved. Apparently, Emma told them the whole story but framed it as me being cold and unsupportive. My mom called me, saying that I should step up and help family in need and that I was being selfish. My dad said he was disappointed and that family sticks together no matter what. At this point, I felt totally blindsided. I don't hate Mike or anything, but I don't owe him my home or my peace of mind. I offered to help financially by giving Emma some money to help pay for a short-term Airbnb or something, but Emma refused, saying it wasn't enough and that Mike needed a real home. Emma has since stopped talking to me, and my parents are giving me the silent treatment. I feel like I'm the bad guy here just for not turning my 1-bedroom apartment into a homeless shelter for someone I barely know. I'm worried about the damage this has done to my relationship with my sister and family, but at the same time, I don't think I did anything wrong by setting boundaries. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my place longer than 2 nights and for not being more accommodating. AITA for telling my sister-in-law she needs to stop using my late mother's belongings without asking. I never thought I'd be in a situation where family drama revolves around my deceased mother's stuff, but here we are. This has been building for months, and I'm finally at a breaking point. A little background. I, 33F, lost my mom about 2 years ago after a long illness. She was my rock, my best friend, and I inherited most of her belongings because my dad wanted me to have them since I was closest to her and shared many interests with her like vintage jewelry and certain heirlooms. My older brother, Mike, 37M, and his wife, Sarah, 35F, live in the same city as me, and we used to be pretty close. Mike has 2 kids, ages 6 and 8. From the start, I made it clear to Mike and Sarah that the stuff I got from my mom was very personal and I wanted to keep it. Some of it, like old photo albums and jewelry, I said I was happy to share or let them borrow occasionally, but asked that they check with me first. Sarah and I never really clicked well, but I tried to keep things civil. The problem started about 6 months ago. I noticed a few pieces of my mom's jewelry missing or rearranged when I visited my parents' house, which my dad still lives in, and where most of the stuff was stored before I moved some of it to my place. When I brought it up, Mike shrugged it off, saying Sarah must have borrowed it for herself or her daughters to wear. I was annoyed, but didn't want to cause a scene. Then I started seeing pictures on Sarah's social media where she and her daughters were wearing pieces that were clearly from my mom's collection. There was a necklace that had been my mom's favorite and a vintage brooch I always admired. None of these had been asked for or returned, and when I asked Sarah directly, she said she didn't think it was a big deal since it was all family stuff, and she was just honoring my mom by using her things. That rubbed me the wrong way. I told Mike that I wasn't okay with this, and that Sarah should have asked me first. Mike said I was overreacting and that Sarah was just trying to connect with my mom's memory. I explained that I have sentimental reasons for keeping those things safe and intact, and that sharing is different from taking without permission. Mike said I was being selfish. The worst was when I went to my dad's place and found that Sarah had rearranged several boxes of my mom's belongings, including letters, journals, and keepsakes. Some were missing or damaged. I was furious. I confronted Mike and Sarah, telling them this was unacceptable. Sarah again said she was trying to preserve memories and help the kids feel connected. I proposed a compromise. Sarah and the kids could borrow certain items with my permission and care, but they needed to ask first and return them promptly. Mike agreed reluctantly, but Sarah seemed annoyed. Since then, Sarah has continued to take things without asking, including a set of vintage teacups my mom had collected that I had explicitly said were not to be touched. When I told Mike, he told me to pick my battles and suggested I might be making a bigger deal out of this than it is. Last week, I found out Sarah had given some of the jewelry pieces to her daughters as gifts, saying it was a way to keep my mom's spirit alive. I was devastated. I told Mike I wanted the jewelry back, but he said there was no way to get it and that Sarah was just trying to do something nice. I'm heartbroken and frustrated. This stuff is deeply personal to me, and I feel like Sarah has no respect for my feelings or boundaries. I'm considering cutting off contact until they understand the gravity of what they've done. But I don't want to be seen as the mean sister-in-law who won't share family memories. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for insisting that my sister-in-law stop using my late mother's belongings without permission? Or am I overreacting and should just let it go for the sake of family peace? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she suddenly decided to move across the country and expect me to accommodate her entire life. So here's the story. I, 34M, have a pretty stable life in a mid-sized city. I own my condo, work in tech, and have a pretty routine schedule. My sister, 28F, and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're close enough to care about each other, but also have our fair share of disagreements and boundary issues over the years. About a month ago, out of nowhere, She texts me saying she's moving to my city from across the country. She said her life back home wasn't working out, and she wants to start fresh here. I was a bit surprised because she never really gave any indication she wanted to leave or that things were so bad. We chatted for a while, and I asked about her plans for housing and work. She told me she didn't have a job lined up yet and was hoping to crash with me until she figured things out. I was taken aback. I live alone in a one-bedroom condo, and I wasn't prepared to have anyone stay with me indefinitely. I told her honestly that I wasn't in a position to have a roommate or a guest for an undefined amount of time. I offered to help her look for apartments and job opportunities, but I couldn't provide a living situation. She said she understood, but still expected to stay for at least a couple of weeks while she got on her feet. I was firm but polite, explaining that it just wasn't feasible. She then asked if she could stay just a few days when she first arrived, promising she'd find a place right away. When she got here, she showed up with a ton of luggage and a few of her pets, a cat and a small dog. I hadn't expected the pets and felt overwhelmed. I told her again I couldn't have her stay here, especially with the pets. She got upset, saying I was being unsupportive and selfish. Over the next few days, I helped her contact a few shelters, checked out rental listings with her, and even helped her apply for jobs. But she kept pushing to stay at my place just for a little longer and said she'd make it up to me. At this point, I started feeling a lot of pressure. She was dropping by unannounced, sometimes asking to hang out or borrow money. I tried setting boundaries, but she'd get offended or accuse me of not caring about her. Things came to a head about 2 weeks after she arrived. She showed up at my door early morning, crying and saying she got fired from a temp job she just started. She said she was out of money and begged to stay at my place just one night. I told her I was sorry, but I couldn't. She became angry, yelling that I was cold and didn't care about family. After that, I blocked her from messaging me for a few days to get some space. I know that sounds harsh, but I was stressed and felt like she wasn't respecting my boundaries at all. Eventually, she found a cheap room to rent about 2 weeks ago. She's been living there since. Our communication is still strained. She sends passive-aggressive messages about how I should have been there for her and how family means supporting each other no matter what. I don't think I'm the villain here. I tried to help her find housing and work, but refused to let her stay with me because I wasn't prepared to do so, and my condo simply can't handle the extra people and pets. I want to support her, but also have to look out for my own mental health and boundaries. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me when she moved across the country with no plans and expected me to accommodate her. AITA for refusing to let my fiancé's parents move in with us, even though it might ruin our relationship. I, 29F, am engaged to my fiancé, Nathan, 31M. We've been together for 6 years and engaged for 1. Until a few months ago, our relationship was nearly perfect. We share similar values, communicate well, and have built a solid foundation. But then his parents dropped a bombshell that's completely shaken everything. And now I'm questioning whether I'm being heartless or simply setting healthy boundaries. Nathan's parents, Carol, 58F, and Jeff, 61M, are the kind of people who make their children feel like they owe them their lives. They constantly talk about family loyalty and how blood comes first. They're also financially irresponsible, though they always find a way to make it seem like bad luck rather than bad decisions. Over the years, they've taken out loans they couldn't afford, refinanced their home multiple times, and relied heavily on Nathan to bail them out. Before I came into the picture, Nathan had already loaned them over $15,000 to cover their mortgage payments. When I found out early in our relationship, I didn't say much because it was before my time, and he assured me it was a one-time thing. But I quickly realized one time was code for until the next time. Fast forward to this year. Nathan and I just bought our first home together. We both worked really hard, 2 jobs each at one point, to save for the down payment. It's a modest 3-bedroom house, but it's ours. Or at least, it was supposed to be ours. A few weeks after moving in, Nathan's parents called him in tears. Apparently, they're being forced to sell their house due to unpaid property taxes and a second mortgage they took out for emergencies. Their plan, without even consulting us, was to move in with us temporarily while they get back on their feet. Nathan brought it up like it was a done deal. He said, They'll just stay for a few months until they find something affordable. I asked where exactly they'd stay, and he said we could turn the guest room and my office into a combined bedroom for them. I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. I told him absolutely not. Our home is small, and we bought it to start our life together, not to become his parents' safety net. Plus, Carol and Jeff are not easy people to live with. They're messy, opinionated, and love to insert themselves into other people's business. Carol is the type who'll help by reorganizing your kitchen without asking, then cry when you tell her not to. Jeff constantly makes passive-aggressive comments about how kids these days don't know the value of family. Nathan said I was being unfair and that it's only temporary. I reminded him that temporary has never meant what he thinks it means when it comes to his parents. Every time they've borrowed money or asked for help, it turned into a long-term commitment. I asked for specifics. How long would they stay? What their plan was? What financial steps they were taking? And he couldn't give me a single clear answer. When I stood my ground, Nathan accused me of not caring about his family. He said, "If my parents were homeless, how could you live with yourself knowing you could have helped?" That hit hard, but I told him there's a difference between helping and being taken advantage of. To compromise, I suggested we help them financially within limits. I said we could help pay for a short-term rental or cover a month of their rent somewhere else while they sort things out. He said that was cold and transactional. The next weekend, without telling me, Nathan invited his parents over to talk things through. It turned into an ambush. They brought boxes of their stuff and started unloading them into the garage, claiming it would just be for a few days. I lost it. I told them we hadn't agreed to anything, and they needed to stop unpacking. Carol burst into tears, saying she couldn't believe I was throwing family onto the streets. Jeff gave me a disgusted look and said, "I hope you never need help someday." I told them they were crossing a boundary and that I was not willing to live together. I then looked at Nathan and said, "If you want them here, you can move in with them." That caused a huge blow-up. He accused me of making him choose between his fiancée and his parents. I said I wasn't making him choose. I was simply choosing not to live in chaos. For the next few days, Nathan stayed with his friend to think things over. When he came back, he said he'd convinced his parents to rent a small apartment nearby, but they were hurt and disappointed in both of us. He also said he felt like he failed them, and that he couldn't look at me the same way for how I handled it. Now he's distant, and our wedding plans are on pause. My friends say I'm right to protect my boundaries, but my mom thinks I could have handled it more gently, that I should have let them stay temporarily and shown compassion. The thing is, I know how this story goes. Once they're in, they'll never leave. They'll guilt-trip Nathan into keeping them there, and before long, I'll be the villain in my own house. Still, I can't shake the guilt. Nathan truly believes he's responsible for them because they did their best raising him, even though their best included making him their emotional and financial caretaker since he was a teenager. I love him, but I can't build a future where his parents' needs always come before ours. So here I am, sitting in our half-unpacked living room, wondering if I'm the bad guy for drawing a hard line. I know love sometimes means sacrifice, but I also know that if I give in now, I'll spend the rest of my life sacrificing peace for people who never learn accountability. AITA for refusing to let his parents move in, even if it might end our engagement. AITA for refusing to let my parents move into my house after they spent years belittling me for buying it. I, 34F, bought my first house 4 years ago. It's a modest 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but something I worked incredibly hard for. I grew up in a family that didn't have much, and my parents always reminded me that money doesn't grow on trees, and that people like us don't buy houses, we rent. They weren't supportive when I started saving aggressively in my 20s, cutting back on vacations and nights out, so I could build a down payment. My dad used a joke that I was playing pretend adult, and my mom would say things like, "Why buy a house when you'll just get married and move into your husband's?" For context, I'm not married and have been single for the last 2 years after ending a long-term relationship. I don't have kids either, which my parents love to comment on, saying things like, "Maybe if you stop focusing on your job and your house, you'd have someone by now." It's frustrating, but I've always tried to keep the peace. When I finally bought my house, my parents didn't congratulate me. My dad said I was being reckless and that owning property would ruin me financially. My mom said she hoped I didn't expect them to bail me out when a mortgage gets too big. I remember showing them the keys, and my dad literally laughed, saying, "Let's see how long this lasts before you have to sell it." Well, for years later, I've done well. I've paid down a big chunk of my mortgage, made renovations, and turned the spare bedroom into a cozy guest room. I've hosted family holidays, birthdays, and even let my parents stay over for a week during some plumbing repairs at their apartment a couple of years ago. During that stay, they made constant digs about how lonely the house felt and how it's too big for one person. I brushed it off because that's just how they are, constantly critical. But things have taken a turn recently. My parents' landlord decided to sell the building they live in, and they have to move out by the end of this year. They've lived there for over 20 years, paying below market rent, and now they're realizing they can't afford anything comparable nearby. They live on fixed incomes. My dad is retired, my mom works part-time, and the rental prices in our area have skyrocketed. A few weeks ago, my mom called and asked if they could stay with me for a while they figured things out. I asked how long she meant, and she said, "Oh, probably just until we find a place we like." When I pressed her for a time frame, she said, "A few months at most, maybe longer if needed." I told her I'd think about it. I did think about it for days, and I realized I didn't want to live with them. Not because I don't love them, but because I know exactly what would happen. They would criticize how I run my house, how I spend money, how I eat, what I watch on TV, and who I hang out with. They'd make little comments that chip away at my peace. And a few months would turn into "we can't find anything yet." And then, "Why should we move when this works so well?" I know my parents. Once they move in, they won't move out. So I told them no. I said I was sorry, but I needed my space and couldn't accommodate long-term guests. My mom immediately started crying, saying I was abandoning them in their time of need. My dad got on the phone and said, "After everything we did for you growing up, you can't even give us a roof over our heads?" I reminded him that I've offered to help them financially with a rental deposit or to help look for affordable housing, but I wasn't comfortable having them live with me indefinitely. That turned into a full-blown argument. My dad accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. He said I was choosing material comfort over family loyalty. My mom called my brother, 38M, who lives 2 states away, and told him I was kicking them out on the street. Now he's calling me heartless and saying I could at least let them stay for a few months since I have the space. He doesn't understand how toxic they can be because he hasn't lived with them in over a decade. The situation has blown up. My parents are now staying temporarily with my aunt, but she made it clear it's not a long-term solution. They keep calling and texting me, saying things like, "We raised you. Now you're turning your back on us, and you'll regret this when we're gone." Even extended family members have started weighing in, telling me I should honor my parents and help them in their old age. I feel guilty, but I also feel like they made their choices. They've never been supportive of me. They've constantly belittled me. And now that I've built something for myself, they suddenly want to benefit from it. Part of me wants to stand firm because I know letting them move in would destroy my peace and independence. Another part of me feels like a terrible daughter for saying no when they genuinely have nowhere else to go. A few nights ago, my mom left me a voicemail that broke me a little. She said, "You bought that house to prove you didn't need anyone. Well, congratulations, you got what you wanted. You don't need us. Hope your empty house keeps you warm." I haven't responded. Now I'm sitting here questioning myself. Am I really that cold? They're my parents. They did raise me, even if imperfectly. But I can't shake the feeling that this isn't about love or family. It's about control. If I let them move in, I'll lose everything I've worked for emotionally. Still, I can't help but feel that familiar, crushing guilt. So, AITA for refusing to let my parents move into my house when they need somewhere to live, even though they treated me terribly when I bought it. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé propose at my wedding, even though my family says I ruined their love story. So, for context, I, 29F, got married 3 weeks ago to my husband, 31M. We've been together for 8 years, engaged for 2, and honestly, I've been planning this wedding in my head since forever. We paid for about 70% of the costs ourselves: venue, catering, photographer, decor, while my parents contributed to a few things like the rehearsal dinner and my dress. My younger sister, Emma, 26F, and I have always had a complicated relationship. She's charming, spontaneous, and tends to get her way because she throws tantrums when things don't revolve around her. Our parents, especially my mom, have a habit of keeping the peace by letting Emma do what she wants. I've been the more reserved, responsible one. Typical dynamic where one kid's the golden child and the other's the peacekeeper. Emma has been dating her boyfriend, Tyler, 28M, for about 3 years. He's a decent guy, honestly, but I've always had this gut feeling that he gets sucked into Emma's whirlwind and just goes along with whatever she decides. About 2 months before my wedding, my mom casually mentioned that Tyler had asked her for my grandma's heirloom ring. Apparently, he wanted to propose sometime soon. I thought that was sweet until my mom dropped this bomb. Wouldn't it be adorable if he did it at your wedding? Imagine the photos, both my girls engaged in one night. I laughed because I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. I told her absolutely not. My wedding day was not the time or place for someone else's proposal. I didn't care how cute she thought it would be. That day was about my husband and me. My mom seemed surprised that I wasn't okay with it and said I was being selfish. That would be a beautiful family memory. I told her if anyone tried to pull that stunt at my wedding, they'd be asked to leave. Fast forward to 2 weeks before the wedding, and I got a call from Emma. She sounded all bubbly and said, "So, I have the best idea." I didn't even let her finish. I said, "If this is about a proposal at my wedding, drop it." She got defensive, saying it would be so special and that she didn't want to take my spotlight. I told her she literally would be doing that. She got quiet and hung up. I thought that was the end of it. Now to the actual wedding day. Everything was going perfectly: the weather, the music, the ceremony. I was honestly the happiest I've ever been. During the reception, I noticed Emma and Tyler whispering a lot, which immediately put me on edge. At one point, my maid of honor leaned over and said she overheard Tyler asking the DJ if he could borrow the mic later. I froze. I walked straight to the DJ and told him in no uncertain terms that if anyone tried to use that mic without my permission, he was to refuse. Later, during dinner, I saw Emma stand up with a little glass in her hand. I knew that look. I got up from my chair and intercepted her before she could say anything. I took her arm and quietly said, "Don't even think about it." She looked stunned and whispered, "You're seriously going to make this a big deal?" I said yes. "Sit down." She huffed, but sat back down, clearly fuming. After that, the rest of the evening went smoothly, or so I thought. Toward the end of the night, while my husband and I were taking photos outside with our photographer, Emma decided to make a toast inside. I didn't even know until one of my bridesmaids ran out to get me, saying, "You need to come in right now." We walked in, and Emma was holding the mic, teary-eyed, saying something about love being in the air, and maybe it's time for another chapter of love to begin. Tyler was next to her, holding a small box. The photographer caught a picture of me mid-sprint. I didn't even think. I just reacted. I took the mic out of her hand and said, "This is not happening. Not here. Not tonight." The room went dead silent. Emma looked like I had slapped her. Tyler looked mortified. My mom immediately rushed over, whispering furiously, "You're making a scene?" I said, "No, she's making a scene." Then I turned to the DJ and told him to start the music again. He did, and I walked back outside with my husband. Apparently, Emma burst into tears and left early. The next morning, my mom called me, absolutely livid. She said I embarrassed the family and ruined Emma's moment. I told her Emma ruined it herself by ignoring my boundaries. My dad, who's usually neutral, called later and said that while he understood my perspective, I could have handled it more quietly. I disagreed. If I hadn't stopped it, they would have done it right there in front of everyone. Emma hasn't spoken to me since. She's posted a few cryptic things on social media about people showing their true colors and never expecting jealousy from your own sister. Tyler even texted my husband apologizing, saying he didn't realize it was that big of a deal because everyone else seemed fine with it. Apparently, my mom told him I'd given permission, which explains why he went along with it. Now my family is split. Half think I was justified, my wedding, my rules. The other half thinks I was overdramatic and that I ruined what could have been a beautiful memory. Even one of my aunts told me, "You'll laugh about this someday." But I don't find it funny. I feel like Emma deliberately tried to hijack something that was deeply meaningful to me, and I'm still angry that she couldn't just let me have one day that wasn't about her. The craziest part? I found out from one of Tyler's friends that Emma had already told people they'd be engaged by the end of the night. She had her nails done, a special outfit for the proposal pictures, and even booked a mini photo session for the next morning to capture the glow. She fully planned it behind my back. And my mom knew. So now Emma's sulking, my mom's guilt-tripping me, and my dad's trying to play peacemaker. My husband says I did nothing wrong, but I can't shake the guilt because my mom keeps repeating that family should come before pride. AITA for stopping my sister's proposal in my wedding. AITA for refusing to take my sister's baby so she could find herself in Europe for a year. So I, 29F, am the oldest of 3 siblings. My sister Nora, 26F, had her first baby 6 months ago. She wasn't exactly planning to become a mom so soon, but she and her boyfriend Eli, 28M, decided to keep the baby. At first, things seemed fine. Nora was posting all the cute baby pictures and acting like she had everything under control. Then, around the 3-month mark, she started calling me constantly to vent about how motherhood was suffocating and how she felt like she was losing herself. I get it. I really do. I don't have kids, but I can imagine it's exhausting. But then a few weeks ago, she called with a proposal. She said she'd been talking to Eli, and they'd both agreed they needed a break to work on themselves individually. She told me she wanted to take a year off to travel across Europe, backpacking, volunteering, and rediscovering who she was before motherhood crushed her spirit. When I asked where the baby fit into that, she said, and I quote, "That's where you come in." She wanted me to take her baby for a year. I laughed at first because I genuinely thought she was joking. But she wasn't. She had already researched childcare costs and decided it would be way too expensive to hire a nanny or send the baby to daycare while she traveled. So apparently the next best option was me. Now, to clarify, I live alone in a 1-bedroom apartment. I work full-time as a graphic designer, mostly remote, but with occasional office days. I love my niece. I babysit sometimes, I buy her clothes, and I help Nora out postpartum, but raising someone else's baby for an entire year is another level entirely. I told her no, flat out. I said, "Nora, that's your child. You can't just drop her off like she's a cat you're leaving with a neighbor." She started crying, saying I was being cruel and unsupportive, and that she was on the verge of a breakdown. She accused me of not understanding how hard motherhood is. I told her that might be true, but it's not my responsibility to fix her life. Then Eli got involved. He called me 2 days later to say that Nora was mentally fragile and that if she didn't get this break, she might do something drastic. He said I was being selfish and that family is supposed to step up when one of their own needs them. I asked him why he couldn't step up and take care of his own child if Nora needed a break. His response? He wanted to focus on his music during that time and get their finances in order. So basically, both of them won a year-long vacation from parenting while I became a full-time, unpaid nanny. When I still refused, Nora escalated things. She told my parents I was abandoning her in her time of need. My mom called me crying, saying that Nora had always been sensitive and I should just help her out for a little while until she got back on her feet. My dad, to his credit, told Nora she needed to grow up, but Mom has been guilt-tripping me ever since. Last weekend, the situation hit a breaking point. Nora showed up at my apartment with a baby, diaper bag, and a suitcase. She said she couldn't do it anymore and that she was leaving for Paris that night. I literally blocked the door and refused to let her inside. I told her if she walked away, I'd have no choice but to call CPS because I was not taking custody of her child. She screamed that I was heartless and that I was forcing her to stay trapped. Eventually, Eli came to pick her up. Later that night, my mom texted saying she couldn't believe I would threaten my own sister with CPS. She said I had no empathy and that Nora just needed a break. I told her a break doesn't mean abandoning your baby and expecting your sibling to play parent. Now the whole family is split. My dad and brother are on my side, saying Nora's behavior is reckless and manipulative. My mom and a few cousins are calling me selfish, saying family helps family, and that I should have figured something out. I honestly don't think I'm in the wrong. I love my niece, but I'm not her mother. I didn't choose to bring a child into this world. Nora did. And while I can sympathize with her struggling, I can't sacrifice my entire life for a year because she wants to go soul-searching. Still, the guilt is eating at me. I keep thinking, what if she really is on the verge of breakdown? What if something happens to her because I didn't help? But then I remind myself, handing over your child isn't the solution to burnout. To make things even more complicated, Nora hasn't spoken to me since that night. But I've been hearing through the family grapevine that she and Eli have split, and she's staying with a friend while she plans her next steps. My mom keeps hinting that I should offer to take the baby temporarily while Nora recovers emotionally. I just can't do it. I feel awful, but I can't rearrange my entire life because my sister refuses to face the reality of motherhood. My friends say I'm doing the right thing, but my mom's constant guilt tripping is making me question everything. Would a good sister have said yes, even for a few months? Would that have made me compassionate instead of heartless? I keep thinking about the baby. She didn't ask for any of this. But I also can't become her de facto parent because my sister refuses to grow up. Part of me wonders if Nora actually planned this from the start. She's always been a little impulsive, quitting jobs on a whim, moving in with guys she barely knew, chasing new passions every few months. When she got pregnant, she said it would ground her. I think she believed it for a while, but reality hit, and she decided she could just hand off the hard part. I know this sounds harsh, but I'm angry. Angry that I was put in this position. Angry that my mom is making me feel like I'm the villain for saying no. Angry that Nora thinks finding herself is more important than caring for her own child. The craziest part? Some relatives actually support her plan. My aunt said, at least she's being honest about her needs. So many mothers suffer in silence. And I agree that maternal mental health is serious. But that doesn't mean dumping your baby on your sibling and heading to Europe with a backpack. So here I am, feeling torn between guilt and outrage. I don't want my niece to suffer, but I also can't take on a role that isn't mine. Maybe that makes me selfish. Maybe it makes me practical. I honestly don't know anymore. AITA for refusing to take my sister's baby so she could find herself. AITA for refusing to give up my seat on a plane to a child, even though it ruined my sister's vacation. So I, 33F, recently got into a massive argument with my sister, and now our whole family is involved. She's calling me selfish. My mom says I embarrassed the family, and my dad thinks I was justified but wishes I'd handled it differently. I'm honestly torn and starting to wonder if I was too rigid. A little background. My sister, Chloe, 36F, is a single mom to my niece, Lily, 7F. Chloe had Lily when she was 29 and has been struggling financially ever since. I admire her for raising Lily on her own, but she also tends to lean heavily on family for help. She'll often expect others to make sacrifices for her or Lily because it's for the child. Anyway, I recently booked a long-awaited trip to Italy. It was my first big solo vacation in years, and I paid for everything myself. Business class ticket, nice hotel, excursions, the works. I planned it down to the last detail because it was meant to be my treat-yourself trip after getting a major promotion at work. About 2 weeks before my flight, Chloe called me. She'd managed to book a last-minute vacation to Italy with Lily on the same flight as mine. She was flying economy, of course, but she was excited that we'd get to go together. She asked if we could plan a few days of sightseeing as a family, and I agreed, figuring it would be nice to see them for a bit. Fast forward to the day of the flight. I'm boarding early because of my seat class, and I'm already settled in when I see Chloe walking down the aisle holding Lily's hand. I wave, expecting her to pass by, but she stops next to my seat and smiles nervously. She says, "Hey, I have a small favor to ask." Before I can respond, she explains that Lily is terrified of flying and has never been on a plane before. Apparently, Lily started crying as soon as they got to the gate. Chloe says it would be so much easier if Lily could sit up in business class with me while Chloe stayed in economy. I thought she was joking. I actually laughed and said, "You want me to give up my seat to a 7-year-old?" She nodded and said, "She's scared, and it's just one flight. Please, you can switch with me. You'll still get there the same time." I told her no. I paid nearly $4,000 for that seat, and I planned this trip for months. Plus, I don't even know what good it would do for Lily to sit alone up front without her mother. Chloe said she'd sit next to Lily for takeoff and then switch with me once she'd calmed down. I told her that wasn't happening either. I wasn't giving up my seat for even part of the flight. She got upset and started saying I was being heartless and that family should come first. By now, other passengers were staring. The flight attendant came over to ask what was going on, and Chloe explained that her daughter was anxious and asked if they could move seats. The attendant politely said business class was full and that seat changes weren't allowed once the doors closed. Chloe turned to me and said, "See, if you just agreed, we wouldn't be causing a scene." I stayed calm and said, "Chloe, I love Lily, but I'm not giving up my seat. You can ask if there's an extra seat in economy for comfort, but this one is mine." She looked like she wanted to cry. The flight attendant guided her back to economy, and I thought that was the end of it. Apparently not. A few hours into the flight, the attendant came to tell me that Lily was having a panic attack, and Chloe wanted to know if I could come sit with her for a bit. I declined politely, saying I wasn't a trained therapist or her parent, and that I didn't want to overstep. I did ask the attendant to check if there were child-friendly distractions or headphones available. When we landed, Chloe wouldn't even look at me. She rushed off the plane with Lily without saying goodbye. I texted her later that evening, asking if they were okay, and she sent a long message basically calling me heartless, selfish, and materialistic. She said I cared more about legroom than my own niece's well-being. I tried to explain that I'd saved and worked hard for that trip, and that Lily's fear wasn't my responsibility to manage. Chloe said, "You could have at least switched for a few hours. You always think you're above us, just because you have money." The worst part? Our parents sided with her. My mom said, "You could have made a little girl feel safe for one flight," and my dad said, "You weren't wrong, but you could have been kinder." I feel like no one's acknowledging that Chloe put me in a completely unfair position. To make things worse, the rest of the trip was awkward. Chloe avoided me entirely, and my parents texted me guilt trips like, "Remember when your sister let you live with her during college? You owe her." For context, I lived with her for 2 months while waiting for a lease to start and paid rent the whole time. When I got home, Chloe told our extended family what happened, and now several relatives are posting vague statuses online about selfish people who put luxury above love. It's humiliating. I keep going over it in my head. I could have offered to visit Lily mid-flight or given her something to distract her, but honestly, the way Chloe ambushed me made me dig my heels in. She didn't ask beforehand. She just showed up assuming I'd cave. And the irony is, if she just talked to me before booking, I might have paid to upgrade one of them. Now Chloe says she'll never travel with me again and that I traumatized Lily. I think that's dramatic, but maybe I should have shown more empathy. Still, I can't shake the feeling that Chloe used Lily's fear as leverage to guilt me into giving her what she wanted. So now the family thinks I'm the villain. Chloe's not speaking to me, and I'm left wondering if sticking to my boundaries makes me an awful person. AITA for refusing to give up my business class seat to my niece. AITA for canceling my wedding after my fiancé's prank proved I couldn't trust him. I, 28F, have been with my fiancé, Ryan, 30M, for 6 years. We got engaged last December, and I thought he was the love of my life. We met in college, moved in together after graduation, and built a comfortable life. I always thought our relationship was based on mutual respect, humor, and honesty. We've had our ups and downs, but nothing that ever made me doubt marrying him until a few weeks ago. Ryan has always been the funny guy in every group. He loves pranks, jokes, and teasing. At first, it was cute, little things like hiding my phone or pretending he lost his wallet. But over the years, his sense of humor has gotten meaner. He says I take things too seriously whenever I ask him to stop. Still, I loved him and thought maybe marriage would mature him a bit. Our wedding was planned for early next year. We'd already sent save the dates, booked the venue, and paid deposits. Everything was on track. Then one evening, Ryan came home laughing so hard he could barely talk. He said, "You're going to kill me, but it's worth it." I asked what he meant, and he told me he'd done a funny little prank involving the wedding. Apparently, Ryan and his best man thought it would be hilarious to send out fake wedding invitations to some of our guests, mostly his friends and a few coworkers. The fake invites had a completely different date, 2 weeks earlier, a different location, a nearby public park, and ridiculous dress code instructions like tropical formal. He said it was just to see who actually reads the details, and that it would make a great story for the real wedding. I was stunned. I told him that was a terrible idea. He brushed it off, saying he only sent about 20 of them and that everyone would realize it was a joke when they got the real invites later. But I was horrified. Some of the people he pranked included my aunt, my childhood best friend, and even my boss, people who don't know his sense of humor and would absolutely take it seriously. I told him to fix it immediately. He rolled his eyes and said, "Relax, it's just a joke." But I wasn't laughing. I told him it wasn't just embarrassing. It made us look disorganized and immature. I demanded he message everyone and explain it was a mistake. He said he would, but I had this sinking feeling he wouldn't. A week later, my aunt called me, furious and confused. She'd already booked a hotel and requested time off work for the wrong date. She thought we'd change plans without telling her. I had to explain the whole thing, and she was livid. She told me she was reconsidering even attending because clearly we don't take this seriously. Then I started getting texts from friends asking why they were uninvited or why we were changing plans again. It was humiliating. When I confronted Ryan, he laughed. He said, "It's not that big of a deal, just tell them the truth." I lost it. I told him it wasn't funny anymore and that his inability to take responsibility was childish. That's when he snapped and said, "If you're going to be this uptight about everything, maybe marriage isn't for you." I told him maybe it wasn't. That night, I went to stay with my sister. He bombarded me with texts, alternating between apologies and sarcasm. "Guess I can't joke with my future wife anymore. You're blowing this out of proportion. Come on, you know me." The next morning, I found out something that broke me. His best man posted on social media about the prank, with screenshots of the fake invites and a caption like, "Can't wait for this wedding to be pure chaos." The post had dozens of laughing reactions from their mutual friends. People were commenting things like legendary and, "I can't believe you actually did that." Some even said they'd shown up at the park on the fake date because they thought it might be real. At that point, I realized this wasn't just immaturity, it was disrespect. He'd turned something deeply meaningful to me into a joke for internet clout. I called him and told him I was done. I canceled the venue booking that afternoon. He didn't believe me at first and said I was teaching him a lesson, but I followed through. I called my parents, told them what happened, and they supported me, even though they were shocked. Ryan showed up at my sister's house later that night, begging me to talk. He said he went too far, but that I shouldn't throw away 6 years over one mistake. He insisted it was harmless and that everyone was just having fun. When I asked if he'd even tried to apologize to the guests he humiliated, he said, "What's there to apologize for? It was a prank." That's when I knew I couldn't do it. Over the next few days, I started hearing from his family. His mom called and told me I was embarrassing Ryan and that every man makes mistakes. His brother texted me, saying I'd ruined a good man's life over some invitations. My own friends are divided. Some say I did the right thing. Others think I overreacted and could have worked it out privately. Now Ryan has been posting vague messages online about being betrayed by people who can't take a joke. One of his friends even messaged me saying, "You really didn't have to destroy him like this." But I can't help thinking, if this is how he acts before the wedding, what would life with him actually look like? I've second-guessed myself constantly these past few weeks. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I could have just postponed the wedding instead of canceling it completely. But every time I picture walking down the aisle to a man who turned my wedding into a joke, I feel sick. So, AITA for canceling the wedding and ending the relationship after my fiancé's prank went public, even though everyone says I'm being dramatic and unforgiving. AITA for refusing to give up my late brother's bedroom, even though my parents want to turn it into a nursery. My brother, Matt, passed away 2 years ago in a car accident. He was 19, I was 17 at the time. We were incredibly close, like talk, until 3 about anything close. He was my best friend, my protector, my biggest cheerleader. Losing him was devastating, not just for me, but for everyone in the family. After his funeral, my parents couldn't bring themselves to touch his room. It was like a time capsule, his posters still on the wall, his clothes folded in the drawers, even his shoes lined up by the door. The smell of his cologne still lingered in the air. I used to go in there sometimes when things got too hard, just to sit on his bed and feel close to him. A year after his death, my parents started to heal in their own ways. My mom threw herself into volunteering, my dad focused on work, and I started therapy. Things were getting manageable until earlier this year when my mom announced she was pregnant. It was unexpected, but they were overjoyed. I was happy for them too, even though it stirred up some complicated feelings about Matt not being there to be an uncle. Fast forward to a few months ago, they found out they were having a girl. My mom immediately started talking about nursery themes, names, and colors. Everything was fine until she dropped the bomb. They wanted to turn Matt's room into the baby's room. I thought I misunderstood at first. I said, "You mean you want to move the stuff to storage, right? Not actually change it." But no, they wanted to completely renovate it, repaint, new furniture, take down everything that belonged to him. They said it was a new chapter and that it would help the family move forward. I completely broke down. I told them they couldn't just erase him like that his room was all we had left that still felt like him. My mom cried and said she couldn't keep walking past that door every day, seeing it frozen in time. My dad told me I had to understand they weren't trying to forget him, but that keeping his room like a shrine wasn't healthy. I told them if they were serious about changing it, I wanted to move into that room myself. It was bigger than mine, and I could preserve it in a way that still respected him. They hesitated, but agreed, and I started slowly moving some of my stuff in. I kept his posters up, his shelves, some of his books. It felt like I was keeping him close while also making it a living space again. But then, 2 weeks later, my mom said they'd changed their minds. They needed that room for the baby after all. She said it didn't make sense for me to hoard memories when there was a real, practical need for space. I told them we have a finished basement that could easily be a nursery, but they said they didn't want the baby downstairs, away from them. We argued. I said I wasn't moving out of that room, not after they promised. My dad told me I was being selfish, that I was prioritizing a dead person over a living child. That hit like a slap. My mom said Matt wouldn't want me to stand in the way of their happiness, that he'd want his little sister to have his room. I shouted that none of them knew what Matt would want, because he wasn't here to say it. Since then, it's been hell at home. My parents barely speak to me except to talk about logistics. When are you moving your stuff back? We need to start painting before the baby arrives. I've refused to budge. I even told them if they start taking his things down, I'll take everything I can and store it somewhere else myself. My dad called that emotional blackmail. My therapist says my attachment to Matt's room is part of my grieving process and that it's okay to want to preserve memories. But she also said I should be open to compromise, maybe box up his things carefully and help design the nursery with elements that honor him. The thought of that makes me feel sick, like painting over the last piece of him. To make things worse, my extended family found out. My grandmother thinks I'm being disrespectful to my parents and their new baby, saying life has to go on. My aunt, on the other hand, told me she understands completely, that grief doesn't have an expiration date. My friends are split too. Some think I should just let the baby have the room. Others say my parents are being insensitive. The baby is due in December, and tension is sky high. My mom keeps crying that I'm ruining what should be a joyful time. My dad barely looks at me. I've even started looking at dorms earlier than planned, just so I can get some distance. I know on paper it probably sounds like I'm being stubborn, but every time I picture that room painted pink with a crib in it, I feel like I can't breathe. It feels like losing Matt all over again. Like they're burying him twice, once in the ground and once under layers of pastel paint. A few nights ago, my mom came into my room quietly while I was pretending to sleep. She sat on my bed and whispered that she misses him too, but that she needs to love the child she's bringing into the world, not the one she lost. She said she feels like I'm making her choose between her children. I wanted to comfort her, but all I could think was that she already made her choice. I don't want to be this person, angry, bitter, clinging to something I can't get back. But I also can't pretend like giving up that room isn't going to break me. So now I'm stuck. Either I keep fighting and risk destroying what's left of our family, or I give in and watch the last physical piece of my brother disappear. AITA for refusing to give up my late brother's room for the new baby. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.